This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
This episode is sponsored by Monkey Stuff. Monkey Stuff makes things for makers. We're inspired every day by the craft and creativity of makers, and design and manufacture tools and accessories to try to make your making life a bit more delightful. Our products are designed in California, by makers and for makers, and manufactured in the USA. Check out our line of pottery accessories and tools at monkeystuff.com. Follow us on Instagram to see what we're up to in our studios, and keep on making great things.
Hey, for Flux Sake fans, looking to take your ceramic skills to the next level? Well, check out this incredible 2 to 5 day workshop offerings at Snow Farm, the New England craft program, where world-class ceramic artists lead hands-on, immersive workshops in wheel throwing, hand building, surface design, and more. Whether you're just starting or refining your voice in clay, there's a workshop for you. Set in the stunning Berkshire Hills of Western Massachusetts, Snow Farm is a perfect place to create, connect, and get inspired. To register for a workshop today, visit snowfarm.org.
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze. Well, howdy, Matt and Rose.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Have you got your brains on today?
Oh, I left it at home.
Yeah. I think I left mine in New Jersey last week.
Really? What were you doing there?
Oh, visiting my family. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Don't like to admit that Rose is actually from New Jersey.
Oh, shush. Did you go to the shore?
No, didn't go to the beach. No, they live closer to Delaware River. So we just hung out with cousins and my parents. So it was a nice visit.
Oh, nice. Well, I heard you all were in the midst of an adventure of raccooing. Is that
well?
True?
That's because I didn't go visit Rose's family.
Yeah, I went to New Jersey. Matt went somewhere else.
I went to go do a raccoo with some friends.
So your bachelor activities are to go raccoo with some other.
Definitely not a bachelor. It was a bunch of us old dogs doing some raccoo.
That is so weird. Okay, well, tell us.
This is what middle-aged ceramicists do. We get together, don't drink beer because it just makes us too woozy. You can't drink beer in the afternoon. You stay well hydrated and you raccoo.
Wow. Okay. So what were you raccooing?
Oh, well, I had to ask permission from my friends of whether I could test. This is how terrible a person I am. They had pots, they had tea bowls, all sorts of wonderful pots they had made. And I was like, you guys cool if I bring some textiles?
Lame.
Yeah, lame.
I did raccoo glaze tests. Well, they were making beautiful pots. They were so nice to me.
Oh,
Making your tests.
Yeah.
I had the coolest thing. It was so cool. So I wanted to do a glaze test, and these friends had invited me to do some raccoo, and I wanted to try something because I don't do a lot of raccoo. I think I've only done it 5 times or so in my life in the last. Yeah, I have not done it a ton.
Wow, I used to do it all the time.
I know raccoo's the entryway drug to ceramics.
It is. It is the entryway drug.
And the first of the 5, I can tell you exactly. I was in high school and we did it with our local potter, and he brought us out and we did the whole thing. And it goes back to that of, I was always told with raccoo, you had to use like chunky, groggy clay to withstand the shock.
You like tear up your fingers if you're throwing with it. And it's like, yeah, it comes to the surface if you wipe it down. Yeah, it was awful.
And I was told it's got to be thick and it's got to be rugged and all that. So I had to test that. And you guys, so I brought our test tiles. And if you've seen us online, we have this very specific shape of test tile. We call them our protest test tiles. And they're really big, but they're made out of porcelain. And so I said to my friends, like, can I test my porcelain in the raku? I said, like, there might be some horrible tragedy. Like they might all crack and fall apart and we'll get glaze all over the place. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So I brought 20 of my test tiles and I did glaze tests on top of it. We can talk about the glaze test, but made some really cool discoveries on the glazes. But more importantly, I wanted to see, does the porcelain, can I get it to survive the raku? Because those of you who haven't done it, like raku, you get a kiln, you heat it up to, 1,000 something degrees, like a Kono 4-ish temperature. Some people go lower, some people go a little bit hotter, but somewhere in that neighborhood. And you put glazed pots right into the fire while the pots are at basically room temperature. We put them on top of the kiln to preheat them a bit. And then you wait until the glaze melts, like, 15, 20 minutes, and then you pull them out. And then you can either put them into a combustible. We were using newsprint. Or you can just quench them and put them into water to seize the glaze where they were. And we were getting some great reductions. So I got these glazes that look like straight copper metal, and I got flashing and all that. But, what I'd always been told is, oh, you can't use porcelain. Porcelain's much too delicate. It's much too fine. So I just brought our normal test tiles. So we do all of our glazing. I didn't do anything special. Bisticone 08. I glazed them all. I did one that was naked. The rest of them were glazed. I tried glazing the inside and the outside, just the outside. I tried them in the combustibles. I tried them just being quenched in water. We tried all the variables. And you know how many of them crumbled and fell apart?
All of them.
That's a spirit, Rose.
She's so mean. She's so mean to me. And she knows the answer because it was none. All 20 of them survived. Going into a hot kiln, coming out of a hot kiln, getting quenched in water.
Wow.
Every single one of them survived solid as a rock.
And this is a high fire porcelain.
Yep.
I mean, I don't even know if that would matter really, but high fire porcelain. Ooh.
It's our porcelain that we designed for cone 10. It can really take up to about cone 14, but it totally survived. It was solid. Like, my friends had pots that the foot rings cracked off of, and there was other issues. Mine were perfect. Not a single fault in the bunch.
When you would tap it though, would it sound like you're tapping a cardboard box or?
It was a little bit better than that. It's not vitrified. No, it's not vitrified.
Yeah, no, I know.
But the other clays aren't vitrified either. Nothing is vitrifying at Kono 4. Or even at those low temperatures. Unless you have like a crazy clay body. Like, there are those amazing artists like Brian Hopkins who does like low fire vitrified work. But that's a whole other conversation. But no, they didn't crack. They didn't shatter. It didn't matter if they were put in the combustibles or not. They were all quenched. And, that's like taking the pots and dunking them in water and they sizzle and cool down instantly. They all survived. Now, again, some people hear this and say, oh, well, okay. So let's lay out the variables just to get the naysayers out. One, yes, it is my clay body that I composed and I've been using for 25 years and it is rock solid. And B, I made it myself, so I know exactly what's in it. And I designed this clay body to be as robust as possible. It's still a porcelain. If you have ever seen any glaze test that we have ever made, ever, it was on that clay. The next thing is that, yes, they are slip cast, and which does mean that they are even and consistent, but that should be a feature in anything that you're making in pottery as a whole, not just in raku. And that I wouldn't necessarily trust other clay bodies. I can't say, although some friends of ours at Muddy Fingers Pottery just posted that they had done a raku with some porcelain as well. And that those survived. They said theirs took a little bit of babying. Mine took no babying. Mine was just in and out, same clay, all of that.
Well, see, like that's what I've taught you all these years we've been together. No babying. So just get over it. Let's go. Let's answer some questions.
Oh, please. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I am really glad you had such a good time at your bro raku workshop. But
Yeah.
all right. So, cereal, we are going to get going here. So, one of our questions that I think we should start with is from Sam from Bay Area, California. And Sam has a question about firing with a kiln sitter.
Hi, this is Sam from California. I have a kind of a funny question. I've got a little kiln that has a kiln sitter style controller on it, which uses those little bar cones to determine the temperature. And I don't have a whole lot of control over it, but I can have a little rheostat that controls how fast the heat goes. And I'm kind of curious. I know you say all the time that, what we're measuring isn't temperature, we're measuring heat work. And the cone should be measuring the heat work really directly. So does it matter how fast we go for the last 100 C of the firing? Or, does the cone just figure this out, sort of automatically because it's doing, direct heat work calculation rather than measuring some specific temperature? Thanks very much. Love the show.
Oh, I like to think that cones have little brains.
Yeah, right.
Who here started with a kiln sitter? That's my question.
I did.
Producer Ben's raising his hand. Yep. My first kiln was a kiln sitter kiln. And these young people, all these youngins today, they don't know kiln sitters.
Mm-hmm.
You should be ashamed of yourselves for being young. How dare you be born later than we were? It's a crime. It's a crime. Yeah, first thing, Kathy, do you want to describe a kiln sitter for our young people?
It's a thing and a thing, and the cone goes in there and it goes down and shuts your kiln off.
Rose wanted to explain that to the young people.
The thing and the thing. And that's how babies are made.
That's how baby kilns are made. Yeah.
Well, so the real answer is the kiln sitters are the way that they measured temperature before we had computers. Now we've got a computer and it's just reading the temperature and it adjusts based on that. What it used to be is we had these things where you would put a little teeny tiny cone in there, and they look like big cones, but they're teeny tiny cones. And there's a spot inside your kiln where the thermocouple goes now. It used to be where the kiln sitter was. And you'd put the cone sitting on its side. So it'd actually be sitting sideways across these two metal posts. And then there'd be a little rod, and the rod would go on top of the cone, and then it would sit on the two posts. Well, what would happen is that as the kiln got up to temperature, the cone would bend, like cones bends. And then the rod would go down because it's bending in the middle and the rod's right on the middle. And the rod would go down. And eventually what would happen is that the rod was connected to a weight on the outside of the kiln. When the rod dropped, the arm on the other side pivoted up and the weight dropped. And then it threw a button. It literally forced the button to pop out. And then it would shut off the kiln. So they weren't really precise ways of measuring temperature, but they worked fine. The interesting thing that Sam is asking in his question is that the way you control a kiln sitter is that they just have a dial. And the dial had, I always forget what number they went up to. It's not 10. It was never 10.
No, it's 6 or something like that. It's something weird. Yeah.
Some random number, right? So you'd have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll just say. And the instructions would always say you turn the kiln to 1 for the first hour, and then you turn it to whatever, 3 on the second hour, and then you just turned it to 6 for the rest of the fire. It was something along those lines. And what would happen is, you'd build up the heat in the kiln. Eventually, the cone would bend, drop the hammer. So the catch with that is that you are using the cone to measure temperature, which is theoretically what cones do. But the accuracy is a bit of a problem because you have to go back, and those of you who've listened to the Freddie Fredrickson episode will know this, of how the dials worked. Okay, so the dials, when you put it to 1, inside the dial was what was called a bimetallic strip, which is a strip of metal with 2 different metals attached. So it's one metal on one side, one on the other. As it got hot, it would curve. The metals would start to bend away from each other. And then that would break the circuit. So electricity would be flowing into the elements, and then the wire or the metal would get hot and it would split apart. And so then electricity couldn't flow through. Well, then it would eventually cool down, and then they would come back, they would uncurl, and then they'd touch again. And then the electricity would go through until it got hot and it would break it. And this is what a relay does now. Basically, it lets electricity flow or not flow through the kiln. What the dial actually does is that it controls how far apart that strip can curl away from each other. So when it's at 1, it can go really, really far. So it's off for a long period of time before it cools again and then comes back together. When you crank it up to 3, it's minimizing that distance. So it can't curl as far away. So it cools down and comes back into contact faster. And when you turn it up to 6, it's just full on. It is just the metals are forced together and they can't separate anymore. So what that means is that when you crank that cinder kiln all the way up to peak temp or to 6, it's just full electricity through the elements all the time, which means the heating rate is now as fast as the kiln can go. Well, one of the things we always talk about with cones is that we're not firing to a temperature, we're firing to the completion of a chemical reaction, which is this concept called heat work. So it says, the cones say if you fire slow, you fire to a lower temperature. If you fire fast, you fire to a hotter temperature. Well, if you look at the cone chart for something like cone 10, it says that a medium firing is 1285. It says that a fast firing is 1305. But if you look at the small cones, it's 1330. Why is it 1330? Because that kiln is assumed to be going as fast as possible. That is the maximum possible heating rate. And so it is adjusting for being fired really fast and really hot because it's just full blast electricity all the time, and it's just going to get up to temperature. And so that's why those temperatures are off for the small cones, because they're just adjusting for time and temperature, assuming as fast as possible. It works fine. It is not as accurate as a computer because computers now reading precise temperatures.
And you have to put the cone in the right way.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you do.
I always put them in backwards.
Yep. It'll mess up your reading if they don't bend right. You have to calibrate that hammer because if because you can adjust what fully tipped over of that bar means. And if it goes too far, it'll release too soon or too early. So you have to calibrate that. It's a ton of variables that aren't pretty at the end of the day, but they worked fine for many, many years.
Yeah, I kept going. So something was working.
Yeah. It's fine. It just could be more precise because you don't have real good control of that heating rate. Because when you dial it up to high or 6 or whatever that top setting is, it's just full electricity all the time. And that's just, you don't know the heating rate.
Well, I was always taught that was just a backup, that you're looking at your visual cone packs to tell what was really going on. And then, we just took our kiln sitters out because I know we have digital kilns, but the former director wanted just a backup, I guess, keep the building from burning down. I don't know. It was silly, so we took it out.
I used to say the same thing. I used to tell people I would, if you had other ways of controlling the kiln, I would always say actually put in a cone over in your sitter. And that's just an, oh no, somebody wasn't paying attention, definitely shut it off. But I would generally not recommend people using the kiln sitter because it's just not a precise measure of temperature. And you're right. That's where the paranoia, and again, all you young people that, you get us old saying, oh, you got to put cone packs in every kiln. You got to put cone packs in every kiln. Not really. If you have an electric kiln with a thermocouple you trust, I don't trust K-type thermocouples, but in our studio, we're all S-type thermocouples. I don't put cones in anything because I trust those thermocouples. But if you have those levels of trust, like Kathy's saying, some kiln hurt that director before, they have a history of trauma.
Definitely. I've seen also photos. I didn't see it in person, but somebody who put a shelf on top of the kiln sitter and it triggered the kiln to not turn off. And it completely went, melted through the bottom of the kiln.
Oh gosh.
I know. Ugh.
Now a snippet from where Matt doesn't talk.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online source for research and inspiration, featuring photos of thousands of objects made by over 800 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required. To find out more, visit www.rosenfieldcollection.com.
This episode is brought to you by Cornell Studio Supply, located in the Gem City of Dayton, Ohio. Find all your pottery and ceramic sculpture equipment and supplies with the best customer service and world-class workshops. Join us for our upcoming Rocket Kiln Workshop with Lisa Orr, July 18th through the 20th, 2025. Visit CornellStudioSupply.com to sign up. Cornell Studio Supply, owned and operated for potters by potters.
Let us move on to our next question. Our next question comes from Dana from Texas, and Dana wants to know about decals or decals if you live in Canada.
Decals.
Is that a Wisconsin pronunciation?
Hi guys. So my question is about decals. Just kidding, decals. What I really want to do is try to screen print my own. And so I found a discontinued recipe on Glazy for overglaze. It's 61% red lead with some boric acid and flint, obviously discontinued. So I wanted to know, can an overglaze be as simple as just mixing some borax and mason stain and then mixing that in with my screen printing medium? I also acquired some lead-free enamels from Thompson Enamels at the local creative reuse store. And I was curious if the enamels would work as an overglaze. Yeah, I guess that's all. Looking forward to hearing what y'all have to say. Thanks.
I've made my own before with China paints and onto decal paper with a cover coat on top of it. And that worked pretty well. It's just a lot of work. And now it's so easy to have decals made. Yeah.
What did you do to dry those, or did you just put a fix-it on them while
Yeah.
Wait till it dries.
I mean, it
Patty's
really
got
was
no patience for none of this nonsense.
Right. Well, those of you who know about China painting, your different oils will dry at different speeds. So people who do the peonies and roses on casseroles and whatnot and enter them into the county fair, they know all about that. And so I just bought some fast drying oil. So it never, completely dried. And there could be some smearing, but eventually it did. What do you think about this DIY version, though?
Well, definitely don't use a discontinued recipe.
Yeah, that's a fun recipe.
That's not a good one.
Not so much?
Yeah,
Okay.
not so much. But I mean, the borax one is interesting. I don't know if I've ever talked to anybody who's used borax before, just straight borax and some stain.
It's not uncommon in an on-gobe recipe. Again, that term on-gobe gets confusing. That just means a vitrified slip, which is kind of what underglazes are. They're really just a vitrified
but she's
slip
talking
with
about
a
an
ton of
overglaze.
stain. Yeah, that's the catch. That I would think that a lot of those things, underglaze being a slip is not going to sit well on glaze. And so you need something that's going to be really thin. And my biggest question is the screen printing medium of, could you try to suspend the enamels in the screen printing medium? That would probably work. Would like straight stains do it? Maybe, but you do need something to get them to melt a little bit, which is what the whole lead, whatever else was in that recipe thing is about.
But what's the screen printing medium made out of? Because if it's polymer, because screen printing on t-shirts don't go through a kiln, they go through a dryer, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's where my expertise fails. And I know there's a commercial product that's just been sold as a screen printing ceramic medium, so that they are out there, but it is outside of my expertise. Could you screen print something to work as an underglaze? Yes, that's easy. You can screen print other stuff. You can screen print gold luster, but that goes back to what Kathy's saying is China painting, that the oil medium really works. And that's really where I would go. Is I would look, the enamel thing that they mentioned is pretty close, but I would definitely look, Kathy had the answer of looking at things like China paints, because it's the oil-based medium, and it's really about it being spreadable and thin and having something for fluxing built into it. So, I always say China painting is tricky, because a lot of them historically have had lead. But yeah, you can get some China paints. Contemporary ones are going to be the safest. If you just want to gamble and you're not putting them on food surfaces, I mean, eBay is fun because you could just get like huge lots of old China paints. And you just mix them with oil. There's not any magic to them. And that would work, but I would not put those on food surfaces because the chances are they have lead. Would I really try to make it myself? There's a bunch of processes out there. People often come to me, oh, can I make my own underglaze pencil? Can I make my own stain? And can I make my own China paint? And my answer is always no, don't bother. It's
really?
Well, yeah. It's too much
how
work.
much time you have.
That's it. It's too much time of yourself, too much process. And like sometimes it's equipment or toxicity issues that you don't have available or you can't deal with that just aren't worth it. And so that's, again, there are existing screen printing mediums that you can buy, or you can try it with China paint, but that's probably where my experimentation would go before I went like, boy, those printed decals sure are nice.
Right. Yeah.
I don't need to eat this week.
You can still get those bags of mixed ones on eBay. Those are really fun, like ones from the 50s and 60s and whatnot. Okay, so we're going to continue our streak, and we're going to answer a third question today. But this is a little tricky, and I need Rose's help. So, Rose, this is actually a text question from Dawn, and you said that you would have the pleasure of reading.
Yes, because I did the question sort for this week, and this was a really fabulous read, and I hope I do it justice. And if I don't, it wasn't me. It's somebody else.
Okay. Go for it. Dawn from Newton, Connecticut, mind you. Yes.
So this story is called In Quest of Plasticity, a Cautionary Tale. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm if some is good, then more will be better kind of guy. Back before I added a vacuum chamber to my old Bluebird pug mill, the clay I used to come out was short, really short, and I was always on the quest to make my clay more plastic. I tried adding several concoctions to my clay to improve its lubricity. I pronounced that one wrong. Yeah. I read all the literature I could get my hands on, and many of the articles I started to read stated that mold in a clay body increased plasticity. Well, one day I came by a suggestion, old obscure publication, and it said, if you want your clay to age more quickly, add some compost starter to it. Wow. I felt as though I had just found the secret of the universe. I ran down to the garden store, and there it was, my holy grail. My mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberry. But I digress. I bought a box of it, and I was happy to note that there were plenty more where they came from. I rushed back to the studio, anxious to create the most plastic clay in the world. I decided that the easiest way to mix it into the clay was to make a slurry of the stuff and add it to the clay via the pug mill. So I put some water and compost starter in a pail and got my trusty turkey baster. Then, as Cheech Marin once said in his story about Santa and his reindeer, I added a little more of the compost starter, magic dust, and a little more of the compost starter, and a little bit more. Oh, then I pugged 100 pounds of clay. As I fed the hopper of the pug mill, I added this new concoction to the clay with the turkey baster. Then I put the pud clay in a 20-gallon pail with a tight-fitting lid. Now it was time to secret it away into a warm, dark place and wait. The waiting was the hard part. In about 2 weeks, I decided it was time. I tried the clay out to gauge if it has been any improvement. Well, I was woefully unprepared. When I popped open the lid to see my latest reinvention, I was confronted by the most vile, vomit-smelling fumes I've ever encountered. On closer inspection, holding my breath this time, I swear it had a heartbeat.
Oh.
Bum, ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Then, just as had been wonderfully performed in the original Frankenstein movie, I loudly declared, "It's alive! It's alive!" and then quickly shut the lid. I marveled at the prospect that I had created clay that was alive. Could it throw itself? I queried. Oh, well, this is going to be good. I was sitting on the secret of life that had just been long forgotten. Oh, those so many years after it lay dormant in the well-worn ancient text where I'd rediscovered it. Now, for the ultimate test, I put it on the wheel and see what happens. I opened the lid of the bucket one more time to scoop out a handful of my new wonder clay. Then it hit me. Not an idea, but a waft of that vile, vomit-like aroma. I made several attempts to open the container lid, and it was simply putrid in there. I dared not touch it. I had literally created a monster. Now, what to do? Well, it was obviously unstable. I must kill the beast. But yet again, after approaching the bucket, I began to gag. I just couldn't bring myself to open it one more time. Fortunately for me, the 20-gallon pail that I had used to incubate this monster was on casters. Ultimately, I wheeled it through the barn doors, then holding my breath, I pushed it, and pail and all, down the hill next to the barn. It rolled down the steep hill about 25 feet where it came to rest, and it remains there to this day.
Oh, God.
People say that the howling we hear in our woods at night comes from wild coyotes, but I just wonder if the beast still lives. If so, I would classify it as a nocturnal, free-range clay monster.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
Oh, thank you, Don. That was a good one.
Remind me to avoid Connecticut next time I drive through.
I know. If you're
be
driving
attacked.
by Newton, Connecticut, keep going. Just keep going.
Just stay away from the smells.
I love that seemed like a good idea at the beginning there.
Yeah, it did. I mean, compost starter, I've used it, but yeah, not in that
Not in the
amount.
studio. All right. Okay. I got to ask the offensive question to everybody here. Producer Ben, you too. What is the weirdest thing you've been told to add to clay that would benefit it?
Oh, it's got to be pee. People used to say pee in your clay. But imagine a whole, like you walk into the studio on like a Saturday morning, you're really excited to be there, and you think someone's pissed all over the floor.
Yeah, I've heard urine. Anybody got anything better?
No, beer, but
Yeah.
that's not as good.
Yeah, beer is the one I've heard. I mean, here's the one. You know, I might have mentioned this before on the show, but years ago, you know, one of the things that's studying plasticity is really hard. It's a really hard thing to track because plasticity is a very subjective thing. And so years ago, you know, I worked under my mentor, Dr. Carty at Alfred University. And one of the things that he had really tried to track is what are the variables that would affect plasticity? And the thing he'd really come down on was transportation of soluble materials is really the one thing. Because, and here, fine, everybody write me your angry messages. It's the delete button is so fast. No, it does not matter what you add to your clay. It is not making it better. There is zero scientific evidence to any of that. So
compost starter is not the one you add.
Compost starter.
I think we've all learned that
urine. Yeah, we've learned this lesson well, thanks to Dawn. But there is zero scientific evidence that mold makes your clay any better. I'm glad that you feel that way, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. But anyway, so Dr. Carty had done a study looking at soluble materials and, dissolution of sodium through a clay body. And what he had found is that aging clay does make it better, that part is true, but it's all about the dissolution of sodium coming from your feldspar and then distributing out through your clay. And that really takes 3 days, and then it maxes out at about 7 days. And then after that, it's never going to get any better. And, Carty and I think John Gill and I were on a panel at NCECA, and I had mentioned this study because somebody, was a question and answer and the microphone's out there. And I had mentioned this study that Dr. Carty had done to the NCECA audience. And oh boy, I have never to this day seen a line form at the microphone to tell me how wrong I was, because they know that aging clay makes it so much better.
There are so many historical references to families of potters putting clay into the ground for the it's
for the next
wild.
Generation. Yeah,
we've heard that so many times. Go on, Matt.
Well, I was going to say, you said historical references. What I would say is not so much historical references, so much as what's the
Anecdote.
Thank you, Ben. Anecdotes of that story. Because actually, you think about that I was told the same thing. Okay, the potters in Japan or in China who would bury the clay for the next generation. Yeah, step back and think about that, you guys. How many tons of clay would a real pottery go through that would be worth it? Like, no, that's not what happens. And anyway, that the bacteria, like, these are rocks. Clay particles are little tiny rocks, and mold is not going to make them more slippery or anything like that, or whatever the thought is. But anyway, yeah, it's the thing. I get it that everybody's looking for the magic to make their clay better. It's just a better recipe, better particle packing, better mixing. And yes, you let it age for 3 to 7 days, it will get better. But beyond that, it's psychological, you guys. That's the real answer. It was in your head.
On the other side, having mold on your clay is not a bad thing.
No.
Right. Right. I had someone in the studio who works for us, concerned about some bags that had mold on them. Like, oh, should I get rid of it? And I'm like, no, it doesn't really matter.
No. Yeah.
As with anything with health concerns, like, Ben just played us off.
Yes,
wow.
Okay. That shut Matt down.
Oh, okay. I know. I watched the Oscars. I get it.
My mom and dad. I want to thank
the Academy.
Good Lord above.
Producer Ben, I'd like to thank you for nothing.
All right. Well, he does have a point. So,
all right. I'll shut up. But thank you for your story, Don. We appreciate your service.
Yeah, that was the best. And thank you for reading it, Rose. That was very well done. Very nice.
It brought back my childhood anxiety of reading in class.
Oh, no. I would listen to audiobooks with those dulcet tones. Absolutely.
Rose doesn't know what a great voice she has. Everybody write in, hit Rose on social media for what a great voice she has.
Absolutely. All right. Well, until we can join each other again, you two have a good day.
Bye, Gabby.
Tell you later, Don.
Bye. Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week. And if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time. And when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system. Beep.